But still, I mean, I'm not so happy with another vote we had last Sunday on a popular initiative, which I would say it was a populist initiative, because our direct democratic system is very good and I really love it, but still there is also a certain danger for populist movements, because then you can bring up, this time it was about management salaries and the shift of power and responsibility from the board to shareholders, and whole Europe thought that Switzerland has introduced any caps on management salaries, which is not the case, but we just changed the corporate governance structure of listed companies in Switzerland, which was not very well explained all over the place. But what will happen, we don't know yet. But still now you have to see that 24 detailed corporate governance regulations are in our constitution, which I think is also rather strange. So this direct democracy has, as all medals, two sides, and this is probably the negative one.
Yeah, please.
Maybe I would like to add something else. We had in 1971 the women's right to vote finally, but we did not have the law of equality by then. And that, when I look at the history of my country, that bothers me a lot. Because if my mother's generation tells me a woman wanted to have a job when I was young, she did not get it without the signature of her husband. And we should never forget that it is not a long time ago we had that in our country, and it came only 10 years later, the law of equality. It came and it changed a lot, but we are still not what we should be.
Mrs. Kinnan, please.
I would just like to state a point to the statement of Christa about last
we have not the same opinion,
last weekend's vote. I mean, the right-wing parties have just not helped to cap these exorbitant men's management salaries over the past 10 years in Parliament. Therefore, this initiative was brought to the people. And my point is, big business in Switzerland, business associations, and maybe your party, just did the wrong investment. They invested 8 million Swiss francs to kill this initiative that wants to strengthen shareholders' rights and therewith to cap management salaries. They should have rather put those 8 million in the family article, and our society and our economy would really benefit from more day school, daycare facilities.
You know, this is the classical socialist argumentation, redistribution.
Of course, what else?
Concerning direct democracy, I would like to have a look at the situation of today. The people of Switzerland has more power than any other people in the world because of its right to make final decisions. But on the other hand, when people is called to vote, participation usually is pretty low. It's 40%, it's 45, 50%. What's wrong here? What do you think about this?
Well, I start.
Who would like to start?
You're right that the turnout is rather low. Now, how you can interpret this fact? I mean, on one hand, you can say all those who agree with something, who are comfortable with their lives, who do not want to protest against something, they stay at home because they feel all right with politics. Then you have the other argument saying that if you have to vote 4 times a year, it's also quite often. It's not the same like when you elect just once a 4-year term a president or a new parliament. So the possibility, even if you miss a popular vote, you have to, three months later to vote again on different topics. So this is also probably one of the reasons. And third, what I often hear is people do not really want probably to understand what they are voting about, because sometimes the proposals are rather complicated and are not so easily understood.
Is it too complicated to vote for everybody about everything?
No, I would say the system allows to vote about everything, because you can change the constitution with any topic. And so I wouldn't say it's for a majority it's too complicated. It's more a signal that most of those who do not vote feel more or less, or do more or less agree with their life circumstances and do not want to change actively or proactively anything. And what we see also is that when the turnout is higher, probably more the opposition against something is mobilized. So there are more negative votes when the turnout is higher.
Mrs. Eva, when we check the numbers of the women, and especially the young women, then turnout is even lower. Do Swiss women not care about politics?
Yeah, I just wanted to make this point. It's a really challenge, especially for us, the women part, is when we see how low the number of young women is go to vote. And I think that it's not only that they are fine with it, we have to try that politics is interesting for them. And often the image of politics is a male image, it's all men arguing about something that people don't get. If you look at television, the debates, it's not very interesting, even for me, which I'm in politics, and I don't want to hear it. So I think it's really a challenge for us politicians to be attractive for young people, to listen to them, to also try to get the subjects which are important for them. And there we are all politicians. It's a challenge for all of us, yeah.
How do you do this? How can you get more attractive for young people?
I think one of the big thing is the communication. When we use social media and we are very active on it, we can get in contact with them. And I think it's very interesting to see the comments, how subjects are interesting, and other subjects we think it's very interesting and we see nobody's interested in. So that is for us a very important thing, the social media. And also the way how to do campaigning, and that's also why I'm interested in America, to see it can be interesting for young people, and we have to find new ways of campaigning.
Does campaigning have to be provocative? You tried the thing, right? You want to talk about this?
Don't show the picture. You can Google me and you will find it. That's okay. Yeah, exactly. We're also trying to do this campaigning, which is provocative, and it's also with a funny thing and a smile on it, and it worked really well. In the Liberal Women, we had a lot of young women now joining us, and that is for us a good thing, but it's a lot of work. It's not just one thing you can do and in 1 year you have the whole progress. It's really a long-term progress.
But there is a big difference between the US and Switzerland, talking about the proportional representation. If you go for voting your new president, you have, let's say, 2 choices, and the choice is narrower than it is in Switzerland, because you have a proportional representation in the government. You have several parties, as you can also see here, and then of course it gets less attraction. It is not as attractive as having Obama or one other person, so you have a lot of people, and you have to make a choice, and of course that you will not change. That will always be a handicap for any campaign. On the other hand, what I really observe as well as you do in the US is the importance of social media. Especially for me, when I started, I was totally unknown, nobody knew me, and it was absolutely impossible just to do it. And what did I do? I used the social medias, and I really looked at the US, how do they do that there, and then I copied it, and it worked in Switzerland. It was really helping.
When we look at the numbers of the number of women in the parliaments, we have the same problem where in the present National Council only about 30% are women, and when we look at the Council of States, it's even lower with 20%. Yeah, it's for the last 20 years. It went up. The numbers went up, but very slowly. What's the reason for this unfavorable development?
Well, I think the right-wing representatives on the panel have to explain this, because in my party, for instance, I think historically, the example of the canton of Bern, where we sit here, is interesting. Also for the Socialist Party, up to the 80s. In other words, women's suffrage was introduced for all of Switzerland in 1971, and still in the 80s, for instance, national elections 1983, very strong socialist women of this canton were not elected. It was all socialist men who were elected to National Council. So what did our party do? It was to present two ballots, a female ballot and a male ballot. And ever since 1987, we go with two lists, separate lists. I was elected at the same time as Christa in fall 2003 on the women's list, women's socialist list of the canton of Bern. And we have, since 1987, practically always had parity. Now we are 3 men and 3 women of this canton, which shows that our electorate wants parity. But we ask also for cantonal elections and for municipality elections. We ask our party organizations to always present parity lists, 50%, 50%. And therefore, I'm much in favor of these hard, clear criteria, half-half, at least a quota of 1/3 if somewhere you cannot obtain the 50-50, but the only way to go is half-half.
Is that the solution, fixed quotas for women in our parliaments?
For me, I think Scandinavian countries show that it's only with the means of fixed quotas that you reach a higher parliament representation, political representation, but also a higher representation on the boards of companies. It's not like in Africa. African countries, they have other means, but here in Switzerland, where we have to do with a very conservative stereotype, male supremacy, still, specifically in the Swiss-German part, the only way to go is with quotas.
I guess not everyone on the panel agrees in supporting fixed quotas, right?
Yeah, we have in our party the problem that we don't have 50% of women in our party in the base. So how we fulfill the list, and we do a lot of work. Krista can confirm that. It's very difficult to
and what's the reason?
Enhance the women, and I think with quotas you just fix it, but you don't resolve the problem at his source. We have to be more interesting in our party, and there I'm very criticizing myself for our parties with our subject, that we interest women to join us and to help us move, and it's not just with a quota we will change it. So I think that has to be the movement. And then all the debate about quota in the boards of administration, there we are more on the same level, because I think in economics we see we have a lot of women studying, more than 50% of the students are women, and so there is another subject. But in politics, we really have to interest women to join the party and not just to fix it.
Well, to be honest, I am a quota woman. We have in the CVP in Zurich, we had 10 years ago we started with a quota of 30%, in the board first, the board of the party, and then within the list for the vote. So 30%. I mean, this is not 50-50, but it was like an initiative to start with, and it helped.
What do you think? How will that change over the next 20 or 30 years? When you look at the Swiss universities, for instance, there you have much more women than men. Is this a sign that also in politics there's probably going to be a new wave of women, so that one day there's equality?
I mean, politics is compared to the business right ahead today, because in business you don't find in the leading positions 30% of female persons or of women. And just one word to Margaret, who blamed us that we should explain why our representation is not enough. I was, like Margaret, elected on a women's list in 2003. And today we have equal representation of my constituency. Unfortunately, we lost 2 seats of men, so there was 1 woman and 1 man left. That is 50%.